Welcome to Little Story Corner, where real-life stories are told. Please sit back and enjoy listening. I still remember the exact second my world split in two. She was standing behind the counter holding a cup of coffee like it was just another ordinary morning in a quiet American town. Nothing about the place should have felt unusual, just a small cafe off Main Street, the kind where retired folks like me go to hear the same soft country music and pretend life hasn't changed too much. But then I saw it, the necklace, a tiny silver charm resting against her collarbone. My hands went numb before my mind even caught up. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't blink. I just stared at that little piece of metal like it was screaming at me from across a lifetime I had spent trying to bury, because I had seen that necklace before, on my daughter. 12 years ago, before she vanished. And in that moment, I wasn't sitting in a cafe anymore. I was back in a nightmare I had never woken up from. I told myself I was being ridiculous as I sat there frozen in that booth. People my age, I'm 67, don't just find missing children sitting in coffee shops. That kind of thing doesn't happen outside of movies or desperate fantasies. I had spent more than a decade learning to live with the silence, learning to accept what the police called unsolved but inactive. My daughter Emily was 18 when she disappeared. One night, she was home. The next morning, her bed was empty, her phone left on the nightstand charger still plugged in like she planned to come back any second. At first, everyone said the same things. She probably ran off. She'll call when she's ready. Kids that age make mistakes. But Emily wasn't that kind of girl. She never was. She called me every Sunday without fail. She wrote notes on the fridge just to say she was running to the store. She didn't vanish without leaving a trace of who she was. And yet she did. The first year I lived in hope so sharp it felt like pain. Every phone call made my heart jump. Every knock on the door felt like a return. I stopped sleeping properly, stopped eating right, stopped being the kind of man who could sit through a full meal without staring at the door. My wife Margaret held on longer than I did emotionally, but her body gave out before her hope did. Cancer took her 5 years after Emily disappeared. And after that, it was just me and the house full of ghosts, especially Emily's room. I never touched it, not once. Her clothes still hang in the closet. Her old sneakers are still by the door like she kicked them off yesterday. Her half-finished college application still sits on the desk unanswered. Some people called it unhealthy. The therapist the police suggested said I needed closure. But how do you close something that was never opened again? That morning, I wasn't even supposed to be downtown. I had driven past that new cafe a dozen times since it opened, never bothering to go in. But my usual diner was closed for repairs, and I didn't feel like going home to silence just yet. So I parked without thinking too much about it. That's how life tricks you sometimes. The smallest decision, and everything changes. Inside, the air smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon. A few retirees sat near the window. A young couple laughed softly in the corner. Normal life, the kind I had learned to watch from a distance. And then she walked up to my table. "Good morning, sir. What can I get for you?" Her voice. It hit me harder than the necklace did. Because it wasn't just familiar, it was layered with something I hadn't heard in 12 years. Something I had replayed in my memory so many times I had stopped trusting my own mind. I looked up slowly, and I saw her face. For a second, I couldn't place where reality ended and memory began. She looked older than Emily should have been, of course, but everything else, the shape of her eyes, the way she tilted her head slightly when waiting for an answer, even the faint, nervous smile she gave strangers, my daughter, or someone wearing her face. I must have stared too long because she shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, are you okay?" I forced myself to speak. My voice didn't sound like mine. "Yeah, sorry, just coffee, black." She nodded politely, wrote nothing down, and walked away. And that's when I saw it again. The necklace, resting perfectly against her skin as she turned. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might fall right out of that booth, because I had given that necklace to Emily on her 18th birthday. A small silver charm engraved with her initials on one side and a tiny inscription on the other that only she and I knew existed. A promise. A promise I had never broken, even if she had, or so I thought. I watched her disappear behind the counter, my hands trembling under the table, realizing something I had spent 12 years trying not to believe. Either I had just lost my mind completely, or my daughter had just served me coffee. Part 2. The face that refused to stay impossible. I didn't touch my coffee. It sat there cooling in front of me, a thin layer of steam, fading into nothing like it had already accepted it wasn't important anymore. My hands wouldn't stop shaking under the table. I kept telling myself it was grief. That's what grief does to people my age. It plays tricks. It takes something buried deep inside you and drags it up when you least expect it. 12 years is a long time to carry a wound like mine without infection spreading into the mind. But I knew what I saw. And worse than that, I knew what I felt. That necklace wasn't just similar. It wasn't a fashion piece you could buy at some boutique downtown. I had held it in my hand. I had fastened it around my daughter's neck. I had watched her laugh that morning, teasing me for being too sentimental. Emily had been alive then, and now a young woman in a cafe was wearing it like it belonged to her. I forced myself to breathe normally as I sat there pretending to read the chalkboard menu, even though the words blurred together. People around me were living their lives like nothing unusual had happened. A man in his 70s stirred sugar into his cup. A woman scrolled through her phone. Somewhere behind me, a spoon clinked against porcelain. Normal life. The kind I used to belong to. The waitress moved behind the counter, wiping down a surface that didn't need wiping. She kept her head slightly lowered like she was avoiding attention without realizing it. Or maybe she was used to it. That thought hit me harder than I expected. I watched her carefully now, not like a confused old man anymore, but like someone trying to solve a puzzle that had just started breathing back at him. She had the same small habits. Emily used to tap her fingers against anything nearby when she was thinking. Desk table, steering wheel, grocery cart. I used to tease her about it. This girl did the same thing, light tapping against the counter edge, almost rhythmic, almost unconscious. I felt my stomach tighten. Coincidences happen. That's what I told myself. People inherit mannerisms. People resemble strangers. And grief fills in gaps that don't exist. But then she laughed softly at something another coworker said. And I swear my chest actually hurt, because I had heard that laugh before. Not once or twice, thousands of times. On birthdays, on Sunday mornings, on the porch steps when she was trying to convince me to let her stay out later than I wanted. Emily's laugh wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was soft, almost careful, like she was afraid happiness might disappear if she held onto it too tightly. This girl had it. Identical. I finally forced myself to stand up. The chair scraped the floor too loudly and a few heads turned. I hated that. I hated being seen like this, like a man who had lost his balance in public. I walked slowly to the counter. Too slowly. Every step felt like I was walking towards something I had spent 12 years running from. She looked up when I approached. "Need anything else, sir?" Close up, it was worse. The resemblance wasn't just facial anymore. It was structural bone patterns, the tilt of the cheekbones, the faint scar near her left eyebrow. That scar. My throat tightened. Emily got it when she was 10, fell off her bike trying to race her cousin down our street. We joked about it for years. I could still picture the bandage. I felt lightheaded. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat. "Sorry, just curious. You work here full time." She smiled politely, but something in her eyes shifted. "Most days, yeah." "Where are you from?" I asked. The question came out sharper than I intended. A pause. Just a fraction of a second, but enough. "Different places," she said carefully. "I've moved around a lot." That wasn't an answer. It was an escape route. Behind her, the necklace caught the light again as she leaned forward to pick up a receipt pad. I couldn't stop staring at it. My daughter's initials were engraved on that charm. M. I had carved them myself. My vision blurred slightly. I took a step back before I embarrassed myself completely. "Sorry," I muttered. "Forget it." She nodded, but her expression had changed. Guarded now. Not rude, not kind, just distant. Like someone who had learned not to let people get too close. I turned away before I said something I couldn't take back. Back at my table, I sat down too quickly. My heart was hammering now, not from fear exactly, but from something worse. Hope. Hope is dangerous when you're old enough to know better. I stared at the counter from across the room, watching her move again like nothing had happened, like I hadn't just cracked open 12 years of silence in my own head. Then she turned slightly, and I saw it again, the necklace. This time clearly, and I realized something that made my hands go cold all over again. It wasn't just familiar, it was mine, or it had been, and if that was true, then everything I thought I had accepted for 12 years was a lie I had been forced to live inside. Part 3. The necklace that should not exist. I left the cafe without finishing my coffee. I don't even remember standing up properly. One moment I was sitting there staring at the counter, and the next I was outside in the cold morning air, gripping the edge of my car door, like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not the soft tremor of age either. This was different. Deep. Violent. Like something inside me had finally cracked after years of pressure. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time without starting the engine, because if I started the engine, it meant I had to decide what kind of man I was going to be next. A grieving father who accepted loss, or a man who had just seen something that made the last 12 years feel like a lie. I drove home eventually, but I didn't go inside right away. I just sat in the driveway staring at the house. The same house I had lived in for decades, the same porch steps Emily used to sit on when she was talking on the phone with friends, laughing too loudly, promising me she'd be back in 10 minutes and always coming back 15. Now it felt like a museum built for a life that stopped existing. Inside, everything was exactly where it had been for 12 years. Her shoes still by the door, her backpack still hanging on the hook, her room still untouched upstairs like a sealed time capsule no one dared open. I had lived with that silence so long it became normal. But now, normal didn't exist anymore. Not after that necklace. I went upstairs without thinking. Emily's room smelled faintly of dust and old fabric the way rooms do when no one breathes life into them anymore. I stood in the doorway for a long time. Then I walked in. This was something I had avoided for years. Not because I didn't want to remember her, but because I was afraid of what remembering too hard might do to me. I opened the small wooden box on her desk. Inside were the things I couldn't bring myself to throw away. Bracelets from high school, old photos, a ticket stub from a school dance, and the necklace. The same necklace. My fingers went cold as I picked it up. It was real. Not similar, not close, not a replacement. The same silver charm I had engraved myself. The edges were slightly worn from use back then, from her touching it, twisting it when she was nervous. I remember telling her never to lose it. She had laughed and said, "I lose everything except the things that matter." My chest tightened painfully, because now I was looking at that same necklace, worn by a stranger in a cafe, or someone who looked like my daughter, or number. I stopped that thought before it finished forming. I drove back into town that afternoon. I told myself it was just to confirm what I already knew was impossible. That's what people do when they're trying not to hope too loudly. The cafe was quieter this time. Same tables, same smell of roasted coffee and cinnamon, same soft music playing like nothing in the world ever breaks. And there she was, behind the counter again, writing something on a receipt pad, her head slightly tilted. The same posture, the same presence. I didn't sit down this time. I just watched from the doorway like I was afraid stepping closer might break something fragile. Then she looked up, and for a moment our eyes met. Something flickered in her expression. Not recognition, something closer to discomfort, like seeing a reflection that doesn't belong. "Can I help you?" she asked politely. I stepped forward slowly. "I came back," I said quietly. A pause. "That's nice," she replied carefully. "Same order as before." "No," I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. "I need to ask you something." Her posture changed slightly. Not defensive yet, but alert. I took one more step closer. My eyes dropped without meaning to. The necklace was there again, resting against her skin like it had every right to be. My throat tightened. "That necklace," I said. Her hand moved instinctively to touch it. Something subtle, protective. "It's just something I wear," she said. "Where did you get it?" I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. "I don't remember," she admitted quietly. That hit me harder than anything else so far. Not because it proved my fear, but because it left space for something worse. Possibility. Behind her, a coworker called her name. She turned slightly, breaking eye contact. And in that brief moment, I saw it again. The small scar near her eyebrow, the exact shape of her smile, the way she tucked hair behind her ear when she felt watched. My daughter's habits, my daughter's face, my daughter's necklace. I stepped back slowly, my mind spinning, because there was only one explanation left that I hadn't dared speak out loud yet. And if I was right, then Emily wasn't just gone. She had been living somewhere else this entire time, right under my reach. Part 4. The girl who didn't know she was being watched. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room with the lights off, staring at nothing in particular, listening to the old house settle around me like it was breathing. Every creak of the wood sounded louder than it should have, like the house itself was aware something had changed. On the coffee table sat one thing I couldn't stop looking at. The old necklace. The one I had taken from Emily's room earlier that day. I kept turning it between my fingers, feeling the edges of the engraved letters. EM. 12 years of silence, reduced to 2 letters on a piece of metal. And now there was a second necklace in the world that looked exactly like it. Except it was being worn by a stranger who looked like my daughter. Or maybe not a stranger at all. That thought wouldn't leave me alone. By morning, I had made a decision I never thought I'd make at my age. I was going back, not as a confused old man looking for closure, but as someone who needed answers no matter how much they hurt. The cafe was already open when I arrived. Same smell, same music, same soft chatter of early customers pretending the world wasn't complicated. But I wasn't here for comfort anymore. I was here for truth. She was behind the counter again. Her name tag said Claire, a name that didn't belong to my world. She looked up when I walked in and hesitated for just a fraction of a second, like she recognized me but wasn't sure from where. "Morning," she said carefully. "Morning," I replied. I didn't sit this time. I stood at the counter watching her work, watching her try to behave like everything was normal between us. But nothing was normal anymore. Not after yesterday. "Urha, I need to ask you something," I said. She paused. Okay. My eyes dropped again without permission. The necklace. Still there. Still impossible. I've seen that necklace before, I said. Her hand went up to it instantly. Protective. Almost instinctive. "It's just jewelry," she said. "No," I replied quietly. "It's not." Something in my tone made her stop moving. The room around us kept going, cups clinking, orders being called, but between us everything slowed down. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My hands were steady now. That scared me more than the shaking had. I opened an old photo, one I had kept buried deep in a folder I hadn't touched in years. Emily's school picture, age 17. I turned the screen toward her. Her eyes flicked down. And I saw it immediately. The change. Not recognition, but discomfort. Like her body understood something her mind refused to. "That's not me," she said, but her voice didn't sound convinced. I held my ground, looked closer. She stepped back slightly. "I don't know what you're trying to do," she said. "I'm trying to understand," I replied. A silence stretched between us. Too long, too heavy. Then she did something small, almost unnoticeable. She touched the necklace again, but this time her fingers lingered, like she was searching for something in it, something she couldn't explain. Behind her, another worker called her name again. "Claire, table 3. She flinched slightly and turned away from me, breaking the moment. But I saw it. Just before she moved fully out of view, her eyes had filled with something. Not fear, not anger, confusion. Deep-buried confusion. Like a person standing in a room they once knew, but can't remember how they got there. I stepped aside as she walked past me, and that's when I noticed something I hadn't before. A small tattoo on her wrist. Faded. Almost hidden, but familiar. A tiny star. Emily had drawn stars everywhere as a kid. On notebooks, on napkins, even on my old work receipts when she was bored waiting for me. She used to say stars meant you're never really lost. My chest tightened. Because if this girl wasn't Emily, then the world had made an impossible mistake. But if she was, then someone had taken 12 years of my daughter's life and rewritten it into something I didn't recognize. That evening, I didn't go home. I parked down the street from the cafe instead, like some old man who suddenly didn't trust reality unless he was watching it closely. I stayed there for hours, watching her come and go, watching her laugh once at something a coworker said, watching her tie her hair back when she got tired. Small things, human things, but each one felt like a memory I had lost and found again in fragments. Then something happened. Around closing time, a car pulled up near the back entrance. An older couple stepped out. They didn't come inside. They waited, watching for her. And when she finally left the cafe, she walked straight to them without hesitation, like she knew them, like she belonged with them. But as she got into the car, she looked back, directly toward where I was sitting. And for a split second, I thought she saw me, really saw me, not as a stranger, but as something buried deep in her past, trying to resurface. Then the car drove away, and I was left alone in the dark parking lot, with one terrifying thought I couldn't shake anymore. Someone had been keeping her life together, and I had no idea why. Part 5. The moment I said her name out loud, I should have walked away. That's what any reasonable man would have done. A rational man would have accepted that grief had finally crossed a line it shouldn't cross. He would have gone home, poured a drink, sat in his chair, and let the past stay buried where it belonged. But I wasn't that man anymore. Not after seeing her look back at me from that car. Not after seeing that hesitation in her eyes. Not after realizing something inside her was reacting to me before her mind could stop it. So I waited. Right there in my car, parked half a block down from the cafe, watching the world pretend nothing strange was happening. Oisath, the cafe lights went out just after 9. One by one, windows darkened until only the faint glow from the back exit remained. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Then I saw her, Claire, walking out alone. Her hair was slightly messy from a long shift. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. The kind of tired that comes from carrying something you can't name. She stopped near the back steps, and for a moment she just stood there, like she was waiting for something she didn't understand. That's when I got out of the car. The night air was cold enough to sharpen everything. Every sound felt louder, every step felt heavier. I walked toward her slowly, not wanting to startle her, but knowing there was no gentle way to do what I was about to do. She noticed me immediately. Of course she did. People always notice when something unfinished is approaching them. You again, she said quietly. Not angry, just wary. I stopped a few feet away. I'm sorry, I said. She blinked. For what? For not knowing how to say this without sounding insane. That made her shift slightly. Her guard came up. I think you should go, she said. I nodded slowly. I will, but not yet. A long silence passed between us. Cars moved in the distance. A streetlight flickered overhead. Somewhere behind us, a door closed with a soft echo. Then I said it. Her name, not the one on her badge. The one carved into my memory like it had never left. Emily. The world didn't move for a second. It felt like even the air stopped listening. Her reaction wasn't immediate. At first she just stared at me, blank, confused. Then something shifted, a tiny crack in her expression, like a sound she had heard in a dream too many times to ignore. I don't know that name, she said, but her voice wasn't steady. It was fractured, like she was arguing with herself. I stepped closer carefully. You used to answer to it every morning, I said softly. Before school, before you left the house, before... Stop, she said quickly. Her hands moved to her head, like something was pressing inside it. I don't know you, she repeated, but it sounded weaker now. Not certain. Defensive. Desperate. I pulled something from my pocket. The necklace. My fingers closed around it before I even realized I was holding it. I kept this, I said, all these years. Her eyes dropped to it immediately, and everything changed. Her breathing stopped for a fraction of a second. Her body reacted before her thoughts did. I've seen that, she whispered. I know, I said gently, because it's yours. She shook her head quickly. No, it's not. But she didn't look away. That was the important part. She couldn't look away. Ta'in. Her hands started trembling. She backed up a step, then another. This is crazy, she said, but there was no anger in it anymore. Just fear, not of me, of something inside her waking up. I didn't move closer this time. I let silence do what words couldn't. Then I said it again, not as a demand, not as an accusation, just as a truth I had carried for 12 years. I'm your mother. That broke something, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. Her eyes filled instantly, and for the first time she looked like she didn't know where she was standing anymore. Her fingers touched the necklace again, but this time she didn't pull away. She held it, like it was holding her back. I don't understand, she whispered, and then quieter. But why does it feel like I know you? That was the moment I realized something terrifying. She wasn't lying. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't hiding. She was lost inside herself. And somewhere beneath all that distance, my daughter was still there, trying to breathe, trying to remember, trying to come home. Part 6, the truth they never told me. After she said it, I didn't move for a long time. I don't understand. But why does it feel like I know you? Those words stayed in the air between us like something fragile hanging by a thread. If I pushed too hard, it would break. If I stayed silent too long, she would disappear again, and I could not survive losing her twice. She was shaking now, not dramatically, no screaming, no collapse, but the kind of trembling that comes when your mind is trying to hold two realities in the same body. One reality said I was a stranger. The other was starting to remember me. She took a step back again, pressing her hand harder against the necklace, like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I need to go inside, she said quickly. No, I replied gently. Just stay with me for one more minute. That stopped her. Not because I demanded it, but because something in her voice recognized the plea underneath it. A mother doesn't speak that way to a stranger, at least not in a way that feels familiar. I slowly opened my hand. The necklace lay there between us. Small, silver, ordinary to anyone else, but not to me. And not to her, even if she didn't know why yet. You wore this when you were 18, I said softly. You never took it off, not even when you slept. Her breathing hitched. That's not possible, she whispered. But her eyes never left it. I continued anyway. I gave it to you on your birthday. You laughed because I spelled your initials wrong the first time. You made me redo it, twice. A flicker. So small I almost missed it. But it was there, a memory trying to surface. She grabbed her head again. Stop, she said more urgently now. Please, it hurts when you say things like that. I nodded immediately. I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted to reach her. And that's when I saw the car again, parked farther down the street. The same older couple from earlier, watching, waiting, not coming closer. Just observing like they had done this before, like they had rehearsed this moment. My stomach tightened. Who are they? I asked quietly, nodding slightly toward them. Her eyes followed mine. Her expression changed instantly. Fear. But not confusion this time. Recognition of danger. They take care of me, she said quickly. Or they control you, I replied. She flinched at that. No, she said automatically, but it didn't sound certain. Not anymore. I took a slow breath. This was the part I had been avoiding since the cafe, the part where hope either became real or destroyed me completely. Something happened to you, I said carefully, a long time ago. Her eyes narrowed slightly. What are you talking about? You didn't just leave, I continued. You didn't run away. You didn't forget your family. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. You were taken from us, I said quietly. The silence after that was different, heavier, like the world itself had leaned in to listen. Her face went pale. That's not true, she whispered, but her voice cracked. I reached into my pocket again. This time I pulled out something else, a faded newspaper clipping I had carried for years. Missing person, Emily Carter, age 18. Last seen walking home from school. Her eyes dropped to it, and I saw it. The moment the illusion started breaking. Not all at once, but in pieces. Her breathing became uneven. Her fingers tightened around the necklace so hard her knuckles turned white. I've seen that before, she said faintly. Yes, I replied, because it was your life. A tear slipped down her cheek, then another. And suddenly she wasn't standing as a stranger anymore. She was standing as someone caught between two identities that refused to coexist. And then she said something that made my entire body go cold. If I'm her, then why don't I remember you? I stepped closer, not enough to scare her, just enough to be present. Because someone made sure you couldn't, I said softly. The older couple in the car shifted slightly. I saw it. They knew this moment was coming, and they had been waiting for it to break open. Her knees almost gave out. I reached out instinctively, but she steadied herself before I touched her, not rejecting me, just overwhelmed. I feel like I'm drowning, she whispered. I nodded slowly. I know, I said, but you're not alone anymore. A long silence followed. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, not like a stranger, not like a threat, but like someone trying to remember where safety used to be. And for the first time in 12 years, I saw it. A spark, not full recognition, but something waking up underneath the silence. Part 7, coming back to the light. She didn't speak for a long time. Neither did I. The street behind us stayed quiet, like the world had agreed to give us a small pocket of silence where truth could finally breathe. The necklace still rested in my hand, heavy in a way metal should never feel. Not because of its weight, but because of everything it carried. 12 years, a missing child, a mother who never stopped waiting, and a woman standing in front of me who still didn't fully know who she was. Her breathing slowly began to steady, not calm, just less panicked. She kept looking between me and the necklace like her mind was trying to choose which reality to accept. I don't know what's happening to me, she said quietly. I nodded. I know. That was all I could say without breaking her further. A car door closed behind us. The older couple was still there, watching. But now something had changed in their posture. Not relaxed, not comfortable, alert. Like they understood the moment was slipping out of their control. Who are they? I asked again softly. Her eyes followed mine. This time she didn't answer right away. That pause told me everything. They helped me after the accident, she finally said. The word accident hit me like a weight. What accident? I asked. She shook her head slowly. I don't remember clearly, just flashes, hospitals, noise, then them. My chest tightened. So there was a gap, a real one, not imagination, not grief. A missing piece of time where my daughter had been erased from her own story. I stepped slightly closer, careful not to overwhelm her. You were gone for 12 years, I said softly. We searched for you. We never stopped. Her eyes filled again. I thought, she whispered, I thought I was nobody's. That broke something inside me, not loudly, but permanently. Because no child should ever feel like that, not even for a second. The necklace shifted slightly as she touched it again, this time slower, more thoughtful. Like she wasn't just holding it anymore, she was listening to it. I keep dreaming about a house, she said suddenly. I froze. She frowned, struggling. A blue kitchen, someone laughing, a voice calling my name. Her breath caught. Emily. The way she said it this time wasn't rejection. It was uncertainty, like testing a word she hadn't spoken in years. I didn't rush her. I let the silence do the work. She looked at me again. Is that really my name? My throat tightened. Yes, I said, it always was. A long pause followed. Then she took a shaky breath. And for the first time since this began, she didn't step away. She stepped closer. Not fully into my arms. Not yet, but enough that the distance between us finally stopped feeling like a wall. Yo, the older couple moved. Not toward us. Away. That's when I understood. They weren't waiting to protect her anymore. They were deciding whether to disappear. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of losing her. I was afraid of losing the truth if they did. But I didn't chase them. Not yet, because right now, she mattered more than answers. She looked down at the necklace again. Then slowly, carefully, she unhooked it. Her fingers trembled as she held it out. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel, she said softly. You don't have to know right now, I answered. Her hand stayed in the air for a moment. Then she placed the necklace into my palm, like she was handing back a piece of time she wasn't ready to carry alone. And then quietly, barely more than a breath, she said, If I'm really your daughter, don't leave again. That was it. The moment everything broke open. I shook my head immediately. I'm not going anywhere, I said. Not this time. Not ever. Her eyes closed. And this time, when she stepped forward, she didn't stop herself. She leaned into me, careful, hesitant, like someone learning what safety feels like again. and I held her, not tightly, just enough to remind her she wasn't lost anymore. But for a long time, neither of us moved. The world around us kept going. Cars passed. Lights flickered. Somewhere far away, life continued as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But for us, everything had changed. Because sometimes the hardest part of finding someone you lost is not recognizing them. It's letting them recognize themselves again. And in that quiet night air, I finally understood something I had been too afraid to believe for 12 years. She wasn't gone. She had just been waiting for someone to bring her home. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to reflect on the people you haven't heard from in a while, and never assume silence means absence. Sometimes life takes people in ways we don't understand, and sometimes coming back starts with someone refusing to stop looking. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it and subscribe for more emotional, true-to-life narratives. Thank you for listening.